justice and peace and equality.
Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, where change starts with conversation. And we're back with Mrs. Asha Ellen of Keep Macon-Bibb Beautiful. Man, what a phenomenal first take. We were talking about, you know, the different sectors of Macon, on the east side, the west side, the south side. And in between break, we connected with people that we didn't even know we were connected to. So I can tell you it's a lot of work to be done in the city of Macon and the county of Bibb. Now, going back, what made you, you know, being that it was your first project, in coming, you said 2020, you came in 2022.
2022. On the board in 2021, and then 6 months later, I became the executive director.
As the executive director.
Yes.
What was your biggest challenge in, you know, connecting people to buy into this vision, you know, on both sides of the aisle, with this organization being looked at or perceived as the elite organization? Oh, nobody, you know, almost like a boule. Almost like. Tell us what are some of the challenges you faced in so that you can move forward with your vision.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if I'm going to call it a challenge, but a hurdle that I did have to overcome as far as with the community and primarily the Black community really trusting the organization. I'm just going to be honest.
Wow.
Because the organization was known more so as an elitist organization, a lot of people felt that it was not for them. They didn't feel that, even though they were in Macon, they didn't feel that Keep Macon-Bibb Beautiful was necessarily focused on their neighborhoods and their communities.
Okay.
And so the first thing that I had to do was build trust within all parts of the community.
Right.
And it wasn't necessarily difficult in a sense of a lot of the communities, people were familiar with me, whether it was, you know, in my previous role as the director of outreach with the district attorney's office, or in other, you know, social and civic organizations that I was and will and still am a part of. So I was familiar with a lot of people, but it was a lot of people I was not familiar with. And so, Macon is somewhat diverse, but Macon can be somewhat exclusive even within our own communities.
Yes.
You know, you got your church folks, you got your not church folks, you got your, you know, your social organizations, your fraternities, sororities, which I'm, you know, a part of a sorority. And so you just got these different levels and these different groups, and it's like, okay, how do we bring everyone together? That at the end of the day, we all have more that we have in common maybe than our differences. And especially when it comes to wanting to beautify our community, it doesn't matter what political party you're a part of. It doesn't matter, you know, what social organizations, what race, what gender. You know, we all want a beautiful community.
Definitely.
And so let's come together just on that common goal, that common effort of beautifying our community. Now, some communities may have more struggles than others, but still, you know, there's still improvements even in those communities that may be considered, you know, more elitist, for lack of a better word. Because even your neighborhood, the streets in your neighborhood may be clean, but the road you took to get to your neighborhood may not be. So let's address that. So we started to work with various neighborhood watch associations. That was a big key to be able to connect with people in the community, to find out what their concerns are, what their issues. And I don't go in to anyone's neighborhood or anyone's community like I have all the answers. I want to sit down and talk with the people and find out what their issues and concerns are. One example of that is the park that I mentioned previously in Fort Hill. Well, you know, I had the ideas as far as what I presented, as far as, you know, the mural on the basketball court, the tabletop picnic tables, things such as that. But the members of the Fort Hill community said, well, we don't have an area nearby where we can go exercise, or it's a low-income community. people can't afford gym memberships. And so can we have calisthenics equipment? I wouldn't have never thought about that.
Wow.
But since that idea was given by the community, when I applied for the grant, I made sure that I included that in.
Okay.
You know, so we have in that particular park, we have a garden that can address some of the food insecurities, but we will have by this fall also exercise equipment.
Okay.
So those of all ages, from the youth to our seniors, can have equipment that they can go to their local park and utilize. I would have never thought about that. That was nowhere on my radar.
Wow.
And so by having those conversations and talking with the citizens of that community, we're going to have calisthenics equipment at that park. And so, you know, like I said, each community is different, but they're also similar in a lot of ways. Like I said, we all want to have nice, clean streets. We want to have, you know, green space. We want to have safe streets. We want to have, you know, so those, regardless of what part of the community you're in, we want those things for ourselves, for our children, and so forth. So those are the common things that I was able to sort of bridge that gap. And then grow and develop from there.
Okay. Now, going back to with you working with the district attorney office and then coming to keep Macon-Bibb beautiful. The thing about it is, Macon we all know Macon is high on the radar for crime. County of Bibb. I think I'm on social media every day and I'm seeing Bibb County Sheriff's Department talk about who they caught and you know, all kind of things that are happening. How important is it, you know, coming from the district attorney office, seeing, you know, work that's like prosecution and you know things of that nature. But how important was it for you to transition to say, hey, I worked and I seen crime on this side, but now I want to beautify this side? How important does beautification play in preventing crime?
Okay. Well, you know, the part of the district attorney, I was not a prosecutor. I was not an attorney. So I was actually, and as the director of outreach, engagement, and diversity, my role actually was going into the communities on the preventive side, connecting with the community, connecting the office with the community. It's not about just locking people up. You know, of course, if people commit crimes, and, you know, they're found guilty, that's one thing.
Right.
But my role, a big part of my role with the district attorney's office, well, pretty much 100% of my role was that community engagement, community involvement.
Wow.
So going to those neighborhood watch meetings, going into the schools, going into the recreation centers, working with our youth and our adults, our seniors. So it really transitioned very well because I was in a community engagement and a community outreach role with the district attorney's office, working on things like the RISE program, which still is going on in the district attorney's office. We're focusing on youth who have experienced maybe trauma. That have caused maybe some of the negative behavior. It's not that this child is bad, but this child has experienced, you know, trauma, whether it could have been from the incarceration of a parent, the death of a parent. You know, I can relate to that wholeheartedly because at the age of 7, my mother was murdered. Wow. And so I can understand what trauma as a young child, what that looks like. And sometimes it just depends on the child and maybe the family structure on the type of help and resources they can get. So that was the part of the district attorney's office that I worked in. And so that translated over very well to still being in community. Because I also know too that in a lot of our underserved communities where we have issues in Macon and throughout the state, throughout the country, because I've gone to conferences statewide and national where you have communities that have constant issues with illegal dumping, with blight, dilapidated properties, overgrown lots, and all of those things, which can have an impact on our mental health. And
it can.
You know, if you're walking to school every day, or in the community in which you live, and the house next door to you is blighted, and there's an overgrown field or a dumping site, like that plays a role in our mental health and our and it's also an environmental health issue.
It's definitely an environmental health issue.
Yes. So, but to answer your question, that transition was an easy transition.
Okay.
Because keep in mind, I was actually appointed on the board based on my role with the district attorney's office.
Yes, being in community.
Being in community,
Okay.
exactly.
Man, that is phenomenal, and you know, a lot of times we have stereotypes when we say, okay, the DA office, and but it's good to know that we have prevention practices in place so that, you know, we can produce success in our community and you know, make sure that, again, keeping our community beautiful. Now, back to the keeping Macon-Bibb beautiful. You talked about sidewalks, sidewalks, and keeping yards maintained, or highways and byways maintained. How important was that for you in keep Macon-Bibb beautiful? How important was that for you to accomplish that in the areas that you achieved up to this point?
Okay. Well, with the thing as far as like with sidewalks, that's more so goes back to as far as like our local county government.
Okay.
We do, some people get confused. They think that I actually work for the Macon-Bibb County government. Now, some of my colleagues throughout the state, like Keep Atlanta Beautiful, for example. Keep Atlanta Beautiful is under the City of Atlanta's local government.
Right.
But with Keep Macon-Bibb Beautiful, we're a separate entity. We are written into the ordinance, though, of Macon-Bibb County. That's been ever since the beginning, since 1974. Okay. We do receive funding from Macon-Bibb County as well, but we still operate separately because of our nonprofit status, our 501c1. We can raise funds, whether through private donations or grants, in addition to the funding that we get from our local government. Wow. So the things as far as I work closely a lot with like our code enforcement department, with our solid waste department, our Parks and Recreation and Parks and Beautification department. Okay. Also, too, though, I work a lot, believe it or not, also with our local Bibb County Sheriff Department as well, too. Okay. Because even with law enforcement, going back to the district attorney's office and our sheriff's department as well, yes, their job is to, of course, keep us safe, and the district attorney's office is to prosecute, but we want to also have a safe city. You know, we can't just prosecute our way out of some of the issues and concerns. We have to have those preventive programs. We have to be engaged. So my organization, Keep Macon-Bibb Beautiful, we're not necessarily the ones that had anything to do with the sidewalks. That falls back on the commissioners and the mayor. But we do communicate. Trust me, I do communicate with them to let them know. And especially, I get a lot of calls from the community about, you know, there's a house. I was just in a community on the east side where there's an elderly lady has been in her home for over 50 years. I actually grew up with her sons. And unfortunately next door to her, there's an heir's property that, has been vacant ever since the original owners passed, then their child or children passed. And so now, unfortunately, in a lot of our communities, we start to see the decay of those homes that grandmama had and lived in for 60 years, but maybe the grandchildren don't necessarily want. But when those citizens, like this particular citizen, contacted my office about the concerns because of that house being empty so long, rodents and things were coming over on her side of the house. The yard was overgrown. And they took a proactive approach. Her son was like, okay, we're going to clear this up, but we, need someone to come and pick up, the yard debris. And I was immediately able to reach out to our director of solid waste, and they were able to get that handled. So I do play a close role. I think sometimes citizens feel comfortable coming more so through my office versus going directly to one of the one of the county departments. And I'm happy to serve as that liaison between citizens and government.
And that's exactly what I look at it as, like a liaison between citizens and government, because I believe the people need a voice when it comes down to what do we actually want. And you get to go directly, again, boots on the ground, talking to citizens, seeing what's the problem, not only with your blind eye, but with your own eye, but making sure that we're meeting the needs of the people. How important is it for you? How important is it for you in your mission to make sure that the people's ideas are included and everyone is inclusive, along with local government? Because keeping beautiful seems that have to have a full throttle, well-rounded relationship all around the county, in the community.
You really do. In this role, you do have to be able to have that balance. You have to be comfortable with going to local leaders about the concerns of the people. And you know what, it's a fine line, because sometimes that's not always very well received depending upon who the local leaders are.
Yeah, definitely.
But I look at it in a way as far as, okay, I'm going to you, if you're elected by the people to be in this position to serve their needs. Now keep in mind, everything can't happen at once.
It definitely can.
Everything can't happen overnight.
Okay.
But something can happen.
Right.
Something can happen. And so I didn't know going into this position that was the role that I was going to take on.
Okay.
Because previously that wasn't necessarily the role of this position.
Oh wow.
But you can't be truly effective in keeping Macon-Bibb beautiful, or whether it's Atlanta beautiful, or whether it's College Park beautiful, or wherever. You got to be able to have that. We are those who are in a similar position as mine. We got to be able to be the bridge that brings the community and government together.
We definitely need that. Definitely advocacy. What's next? So now that we have, I believe, the east side, working on the east side and the west side, what's next for Macon-Bibb beautiful going into the second half of the year? Like, doing the things that you guys have accomplished. What's next for Macon-Bibb beautiful?
Well, we're going to continue to do what, people know us to do as far as focusing on and doing those neighborhood cleanups, galvanizing more volunteers, galvanizing more partners to be able to do those cleanup initiatives. But we're also going to, focus on some things as far as we have coming up later on this month, where we're working with a couple of organizations to address some of the issues that we have with, that's with climate change. And we can all feel the extreme heat that we're experiencing, and so one of the things that we're going to continue to do is continue to focus on those areas that may not have adequate trees in their communities. We have had success with planting trees throughout several neighborhoods, on several playground campuses at several schools, to make sure that our children, when they're playing on the playground, that they have they have shade. And trees may not be something that we just think about, but the value that they bring, as far as not just as a cooling source, but also to a lot of our people suffer from asthma, and we don't think about that connection as far as maybe living in an environment with not enough trees, to provide us with those oxygen sources. So we're going to be working on more things as far as those initiatives. Like I said, with climate change, making sure that all of our communities that maybe lack trees or don't have proper tree sources, that we also focus on that as well. In addition to working with other organizations on helping them with their community gardens, so to deal with the food insecurities, and then also continuing just to do what we've been doing as far as with our schools, going into our schools. We've done a lot even this summer with summer camps, talking with our kids, educating our kids about recycling and waste reduction initiatives, all of these things that I think we take for granted. But in the long run, with recycling, in Macon-Bibb, we already don't have a landfill, so we have to take all of our waste to neighboring counties. And from a conference that I attended with Keep America Beautiful, within the next 30 years in America, most of our landfills are going to be overfilled. And so what do we do when that happens? Well, we got to start being proactive now. And so I've applied for some recycling initiative grants to be able to get into some of our schools, to be able to start developing and recycling and waste reduction initiatives, preparing for the next 30 years.
Wow. That is so wow. Landfills, maybe fields.
Something that we don't think. Once again, you don't think about when you're putting your trash, whether it's in a dumpster, if you live in a condo or apartment community, or when you pull your trash to the curb. You don't think about where it goes.
At all. You just want to get the trash out of your house.
You just want to get it out of your house. But it goes somewhere. And
yes.
so, like I said, several communities are struggling as far as with their landfills. Ours being one, to the point where we have to, like I said, our waste has to go to a neighboring county.
Okay.
But like I said, within the next 30 years, just throughout our country.
Man, we're going to have to, you hold that thought, because we're going to have to go to another commercial break, and we're going to talk about recycling, what to do, personally within your home, what you as an individual can do in keeping America beautiful.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean? So, all right, Game Changers Magazine, Game Changers Media Network, Voices of the Village podcast, where change starts with conversation. You guys stay tuned. We're coming back with Mrs. Asha Ellen of Keep Macon-Bibb Beautiful. You guys stay tuned.
And equality. Now the world they will see. That's why.